Ever notice how we treat money like it should fit in a perfect little box? Like it's all about the right formulas and spreadsheets. But then life throws a wrench in the works. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much of our financial success is about what we know versus, how we actually behave with money? That's our deep dive today. And to guide us through the twists and turns of our money mindsets, we're tapping into the wisdom of the psychology of money.
Mm.
This book isn't about stock tips or market predictions, though. It dives deep into the human side of money.
What always fascinates me is how much our view of money is built on, well, a shaky foundation, to say the least. Think about it. Your personal experiences, as unique as they are just a tiny, and I mean minuscule fraction of everything that's ever happened in financial history.
Yeah, I had this big aha moment arguing with a friend once. See, they grew up during a period of crazy hyperinflation,
Hmm.
totally skewed their whole view on saving compared to mine.
Exactly. Our brains latch onto those early experiences like they're the only truth out there. There was this study, really fascinating, show that people who live through those periods of sky-high inflation, they make wildly different investment decisions. And not just for a little while, we're talking decades later. Their definition of normal is totally different.
Okay, so how does this apply to, the average person listening right now? Think back to a time when your view on money was the complete opposite of someone else you knew. Chances are it wasn't about one person being a financial genius and the other being clueless. It's more about those invisible scripts we've picked up along the way, shaping how we think and react.
And those scripts, they can lead to some decisions that seem, well, a bit head-scratching from the outside. Like, the psychology of money talks about people with very limited incomes buying lottery tickets. Seems kind of illogical, right? Why risk what little you have? But put yourself in their shoes for a second. Imagine if saving felt impossible, living paycheck to paycheck. That lottery ticket. It's not just gambling, it's a tiny glimmer of hope, a dream that maybe, just maybe, things could change.
So a decision that seems irrational, if you just look at the numbers, suddenly makes a whole lot more sense when you consider the person's experiences, their emotions, their hopes.
Precisely. And this ties directly into the whole luck and risk thing, which often gets ignored when we talk about success. We love a good pull themselves up by their bootstraps story, emphasizing skill and hard work.
Yeah.
But the truth is, luck plays a huge role.
Like Bill Gates, right. Brilliant guy, no doubt. But imagine if he hadn't had access to a computer lab as a kid, back when those things were rarer than hen's teeth.
Uh,
Who knows how many potential tech stars were never exposed to that, just because of circumstance.
exactly. If you could rewind and have Bill Gates with an identical twin, same brains and everything, but the twin didn't stumble into that computer lab, who knows where they'd be? It really highlights how much luck, good or bad, is woven into even the most impressive success stories.
So it's not about dismissing hard work, but realizing that luck is always a factor, which is good to remember both when we're tempted to judge someone else's financial missteps and when we're being hard on ourselves for our own stumbles.
And speaking of misjudging things, our brains are wired for stories, especially when it comes to money. We crave those narratives, trying to fit financial events into neat little storylines, even when they don't quite fit.
Oh, so like predicting the stock market based on
Right.
like what happened last Tuesday, or if Punxsutawney Phil saw his shadow.
Exactly. We fall into that trap of historians as prophets. We pore over the past, convinced it holds some kind of map to the future.
Right.
But look at the 2008 financial crisis, for example. Plenty of so-called experts saw all the warning signs after it all went down, but how many actually predicted it beforehand?
Good point.
The future? Well, it has a way of throwing curveballs, writing a plot we just didn't see coming.
So how can we learn from history without treating it like a crystal ball? I mean, the psychology of money isn't saying we should just ignore the past completely.
No, not at all. But it does remind us that clinging to outdated strategies can really backfire. Think about those investors who are stuck on using Benjamin Graham's formulas from The Intelligent Investor,
Hmm.
trying to apply those decades later when the market had completely transformed.
Yeah, even Graham himself adapted over time.
Exactly.
So what does this mean for someone trying to, make sense of their own finances? Should we even bother trying to plan for the future if it's so unpredictable?
Planning is still crucial, but you have to go into it with a flexible mindset. One thing the psychology of money emphasizes is that the potential for those big, juicy returns, well, it often comes with a side of volatility, those ups and downs that make you question everything.
So it's like hopping on a roller coaster, right? You're strapped in knowing there'll be drops and turns that take your breath away. But you didn't pay for just the smooth parts, right? You've signed up for the whole experience.
Exactly. Think of volatility as the price of admission to the market. Take Netflix, for example. Between 2002 and 2018, their returns were through the roof, over 35,000%.
Wow.
Sounds incredible, right? But for a big chunk of that time, their stock was actually below its previous highs. And Monster Beverage, similar story. Huge gains eventually, but investors had to stomach years of it trading below its previous peaks.
So even those who held on and ended up reaping those amazing rewards had to ride out a whole lot of uncertainty.
Yes.
It's a good reminder that if a stock's always steadily climbing, it's probably not reflecting the real world.
Right. And that's where the book's emphasis on having that room for error comes into play. It's not about being totally risk averse, but more about building in a buffer for yourself, for your financial life.
So not just an emergency fund, but a cushion for those, wait, I swear I knew what I was doing moments. We all have those.
Exactly. Life has a way of throwing curveballs, a job loss, unexpected medical bills, that surprise home repair you weren't counting on. It's about having the flexibility to absorb those financial shocks without completely derailing your long-term plan.
Okay.
It's like you wouldn't build a house without factoring in some margin of safety for the foundation, would you? You'd want it to be able to withstand a storm.
So room for error is kind of like the financial equivalent of making sure your house is built on solid bedrock instead of like shifting sand. It's about having that peace of mind just as much as it is about being financially savvy.
Exactly.
But doesn't playing it too safe mean you might miss out on some potentially awesome returns?
That's where finding that balance comes in. The psychology of money isn't suggesting you hoard cash under your mattress. It's about finding that sweet spot. Taking calculated risks while knowing you can weather the inevitable storms. It's about being able to sleep soundly at night.
Okay, so we're talking about balancing that historical perspective, accepting that some volatility just comes with the territory, and building in that safety net. It's starting to feel less like a financial tightrope walk and more like, well, maybe not a leisurely stroll in the park, but definitely a path we can navigate.
And that's a great segue into how the psychology of money talks about true wealth. It's not just about having a massive bank account. It's about having control over your time, your options.
So forget the McMansion and the fancy sports car.
Yeah.
We're talking about being able to say, hey, I can take that dream trip, or I can finally support that cause I'm passionate about, or even just, you know what, I'm taking Tuesday off because I feel like it. And doing all that without stressing about the financial implications.
Exactly. The author, he tells the story about a musician friend who saved up enough to finally quit his soul-crushing job. He wanted to pursue music full-time, follow his passion.
Good for him.
Now, did he become a millionaire? No. But did he gain something infinitely more valuable? Absolutely. He bought back his time. He gained the freedom to chase what he truly loved. That's wealth.
Yeah. Reminds me of that quote, time is the coin of your life. It is the only coin you have, and only you can determine how it will be spent. Sounds like the psychology of money is encouraging us to really think about what we're trading our time for.
And that actually brings up something I think gets lost in a lot of the personal finance advice out there. We get so fixated on like what to buy, the stuff itself, that we forget to ask ourselves, what are we actually trying to achieve with all this?
It's like that whole I'll be happy when
Yeah.
thing, right? I'll be happy when I have the big house, when I can finally afford that car. But then you get those things, and then what?
Exactly. There have actually been studies on this, and it turns out people's biggest regrets later in life, they're usually not about the stuff they bought. It's the experiences they missed out on, the relationships they didn't prioritize, the chances they were too afraid to take.
Makes you think twice about those so-called must-have items we convince ourselves we need. Like maybe that expensive luxury item. It's less about the thing itself and more about the feeling we hope it's going to bring.
Exactly. And the psychology of money really pushes this idea. What if instead of trying to buy our way into those positive feelings, what if we made different choices? Choices that just naturally evoked those same feelings.
Oh, like that.
Right. So instead of thinking you need a bigger house to feel secure, maybe it's about deepening the relationships you have with your loved ones, creating that sense of belonging and connection. Or instead of chasing a higher salary at a job you can barely stand, what if you poured your energy into a passion project that truly fulfills you?
So it's about using money as a tool to bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be, but focusing on those experiences, those values that truly matter to you.
Yes.
Makes a lot of sense, but honestly, how do you even escape that whole comparison track these days? I mean, social media makes it so easy to fall into that keeping up with the Joneses mentality.
Oh, it's tough, for sure. But the psychology of money has a good reminder for us there, too. Everything you see on social media, it's just a highlight reel, right? It's not the whole film. Remember that executive we talked about earlier, the one who overpaid for that lamp? So caught up in keeping up appearances, he ended up worse off financially.
Ouch, yeah. That's gotta sting.
It's like we're all in this race, but we can only see everyone else's finish line, right? Never their starting point, never the hurdles they had to overcome to get there.
That's a really good way to put it.
Which is exactly why it's so important to define your own finish line. What does success truly mean to you? Not to your parents, not to society, but to you.
Right.
Maybe it's about having the freedom and flexibility to volunteer in your community, or finally pursue that creative passion you've always had, even if it doesn't make you a millionaire.
So we're back to aligning our financial choices with our own personal definition of success, even if those choices don't make sense to other people.
Exactly. One of the biggest takeaways from the psychology of money, at least for me, is that personal finance is deeply personal. It's about finding what truly works for you, for your own unique circumstances and your goals. And sometimes that means going against the grain a little bit, trusting your gut, and being okay with not fitting into that cookie cutter mold that everyone expects.
And isn't that really what true wealth is about at the end of the day? Not just about financial security, but about having the freedom to make those choices that align with your values,
Yeah.
without feeling pressured by what everyone else is doing.
Couldn't have said it better myself. The book drives home this really profound idea. The highest form of wealth is the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today.
Wow. That's really powerful.
It is.
It really shifts your perspective, doesn't it? It's not about racking up some arbitrary amount of money. It's about having the autonomy to shape your life on your own terms. Now, that's something worth striving for.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this duck dive, think about which of these insights resonated most with you. What surprised you? What maybe challenged your assumptions? Because at the end of the day, the psychology of money, it's not about some get-rich-quick scheme. It's about understanding those hidden forces that shape our financial decisions, both the good and the bad. It's about bridging that gap between, our head and our heart when it comes to money.
Beautifully said. We hope this deep dive helped you all approach your own financial journey with a bit more self-awareness, maybe a little more compassion for yourselves, and hopefully a renewed sense of possibility. Until next time.